The morning rain drummed against the windows of downtown Seattle as Michael stepped out of his sleek black car. At 42, he had everything most people dreamed of: a tech company worth millions, houses in 3 states, and enough money to buy whatever he wanted. His expensive suit stayed dry under a designer umbrella as he walked quickly toward his office building. Michael was in the middle of the biggest deal of his career. His phone pressed against his ear. He spoke rapidly to his lawyer about a company buyout that would make him even richer. The numbers flying around were huge, more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. But for Michael, it was just another Tuesday morning. "The contract needs to be ready by noon," he said into the phone, dodging other people on the busy sidewalk. "I don't care what it takes. This deal cannot fall through." His Italian leather shoes clicked against the wet pavement as he turned the corner near the famous Pike Place Market. The smell of fresh fish and coffee filled the air, mixed with the scent of rain. Street vendors were setting up their stalls despite the weather, hoping to catch early morning customers. Michael barely noticed any of it. His world was numbers, deals, and deadlines. He lived in a bubble of luxury cars, 5-star restaurants, and boardroom meetings. The real world, the one where people struggled to pay rent or find their next meal, might as well have been on another planet. That was about to change. As he rounded the next corner, his expensive shoes hit a small puddle. He stumbled slightly, trying to keep his balance while still talking on the phone. That's when he saw her. Sitting against the cold brick wall of an old building was a young woman. She looked about 19, maybe 20. Her brown hair hung in tangles around her face, and her clothes were worn and dirty. In front of her sat a piece of cardboard with words written in black marker. "Please help. Anything appreciated?" Michael had walked past homeless people countless times before. He usually looked the other way or crossed the street, not because he was mean, but because he simply didn't know what to do. Their world and his world felt completely separate, but this time was different. As he stepped around her, trying not to interrupt his phone call, something caught his eye. Something that made his heart stop beating for just a moment. Around the young woman's neck was a necklace. It wasn't fancy or expensive looking, but Michael recognized it instantly. The silver chain held a small pendant shaped like a butterfly. The butterfly had detailed patterns carved into its wings, Celtic designs that looked like they told an ancient story. Michael's phone call became background noise. The voice of his lawyer faded away as he stared at the necklace. His hands began to shake. "Sir, are you still there?" His lawyer's voice came through the phone. "Michael, the contract details?" But Michael couldn't speak. He couldn't move. Because he knew that necklace. He had seen it every single day for the past 5 years. The phone slipped from his fingers and crashed to the wet sidewalk with a loud crack. The sound made the young woman look up at him. Her green eyes were tired but alert, like someone who had learned to be careful about strangers. "Sorry," she said quietly, starting to gather her few belongings. "I'll move if I'm in your way." Michael barely heard her words. His eyes stayed fixed on the necklace. With trembling hands, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. Inside was a photograph, one he carried everywhere, one he looked at every day. The picture showed a beautiful woman with long dark hair and a bright smile. She was wearing a white dress and holding a bouquet of flowers. It was his wedding day 5 years ago. And around her neck, his wife wore the exact same butterfly necklace. "Where did you get that?" Michael whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of rain and city traffic. The young woman's hand moved protectively to her throat, covering the necklace. "Get what?" "The necklace," Michael said, louder this time. "That necklace you're wearing." She backed away from him slightly, her eyes becoming suspicious. Living on the streets had taught her to be wary of anyone who paid too much attention to her few possessions. "It's mine," she said firmly. "It belonged to my grandmother." Michael held out the photograph with shaking hands. "This was my wife," he said. "She died in a car accident 5 years ago." "That necklace, in the exact same one you're wearing, it was buried with her." The young woman looked at the photograph, then back at Michael. Her expression changed from suspicion to confusion. "That's impossible," she said. "This has been in my family for generations. My grandmother gave it to me before she died. It's the only thing I have left of her." People walking by began to notice the strange conversation. Some slowed down to listen, curious about what was happening. A businessman arguing with a homeless girl about jewelry wasn't something you saw every day. Michael studied the young woman's face more carefully. Something about her looked familiar, but he couldn't place what it was. Her green eyes reminded him of someone, but the memory stayed just out of reach. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "Amy. Amy what?" "Just Amy," she said, not wanting to give more information to a stranger. Michael's mind raced. His wife had mentioned having relatives she'd lost touch with over the years. Family members who had drifted apart, moved away, or disappeared into difficult circumstances. She had always wanted to find them, to reconnect with the family she barely remembered. But she died before she could start that search. "My wife's name was Elena," Michael said softly. She always talked about finding her lost family members. She said there were people out there who might need help, people she'd never had the chance to meet. Amy's expression softened slightly at the mention of Elena's name, though she didn't say why. The rain began to fall harder, and Michael realized they were both getting soaked. His expensive suit was ruined, but for the first time in years he didn't care about something like that. "Listen," he said, putting his wallet away. "I don't know what's happening here, but this can't be a coincidence. Two identical necklaces, both with family history. There has to be a connection." Amy stood up slowly, gathering her cardboard sign and a small backpack that seemed to contain everything she owned. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing," she said, "but I'm not interested. Rich guys like you don't just stop to chat with people like me unless you want something." She started to walk away, but Michael called after her. "Wait," he said. "I'm not trying to take anything from you. I need to understand, please." Amy paused and looked back at him. For a moment, something passed between them, a recognition that neither could quite name. "I'll be here tomorrow," she said finally, "if you really want to talk." Then she disappeared into the crowd of morning commuters, leaving Michael standing alone in the rain with his broken phone at his feet and 1,000 questions in his head. Michael barely slept that night. He kept staring at the photograph of his wife Elena, then looking at the broken phone screen that still showed his lawyer's missed calls. The $1 million deal that had seemed so important yesterday now felt meaningless compared to the mystery of the necklace. The next morning, he arrived at the same corner 30 minutes early. The rain had stopped, but the air was still cold and damp. He brought a cup of coffee and a breakfast sandwich, not sure if Amy would even show up. When she appeared around 9 o'clock, she looked just as tired as he felt. She was carrying the same small backpack and cardboard sign, but she seemed more alert today, like she'd been thinking about their conversation too. "You came back," she said, settling into the same spot against the brick wall. "I said I would," Michael replied, holding out the coffee. "This is for you if you want it." Amy looked at the cup suspiciously for a moment, then accepted it. The warm liquid seemed to help her relax a little. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," she began, "about your wife having the same necklace. I still don't understand how that's possible." Michael sat down on the curb across from her, not caring that his clean clothes would get dirty.
"Can you tell me more about your grandmother?"
"The one who gave you the necklace?" Amy wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, using it to warm her fingers. "Her name was Rose. She raised me from the time I was 3 until she died when I was 8. After that," she paused, looking down at the ground. "After that, things got really hard." "What happened to your parents?" "Never knew my dad. My mom had problems with drugs. She left me with Rose and just never came back." Amy's voice was matter-of-fact, like she'd told this story many times before. "Rose used to tell me stories about our family, about how this necklace had been passed down for generations. She said it would protect me and remind me that I always belonged somewhere, even when it didn't feel like it." Michael felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. "Rose. What was her last name?" "Martinez. Rose Martinez." Michael's heart began racing. Elena's mother had been a Martinez before she married. Elena had mentioned an Aunt Rose who disappeared from the family when Elena was very young. "Amy," he said carefully. "What's your full name?" She hesitated again, but something in his expression made her answer. "Amy Rose Martinez. I was named after my grandmother." Michael pulled out his phone and showed her another photo, this one of Elena with an elderly woman at a family gathering. "Does this woman look familiar to you?" Amy stared at the picture, and Michael watched her face change. Her eyes grew wide and her hand moved instinctively to the necklace. "That looks like, but that's impossible. Rose died 15 years ago." This picture was taken 16 years ago, Michael said softly. This is Elena with her Aunt Rose. Elena's Aunt Rose, who the family lost touch with when Elena was a child. Amy's coffee cup slipped from her hands, spilling onto the sidewalk. You're saying that your wife was related to my grandmother? I think your grandmother Rose was Elena's aunt. That would make Elena your cousin. Michael's voice was gentle, but he could see the shock in Amy's eyes. Elena used to talk about wanting to find Rose's family. She said Rose had a granddaughter somewhere, but she never knew what happened to either of them. Amy stood up quickly, backing away from Michael. No, this is some kind of trick. Rich people don't just show up and claim homeless people are their family. That doesn't happen in real life. Amy, wait. You probably researched me somehow, she said, her voice rising. Found out about Rose and made up this whole story. Maybe you want to take the necklace, or maybe this is some weird social experiment for rich people. People walking by started to stare as Amy's voice got louder. Michael stood up slowly, holding his hands out peacefully. I understand why you don't trust me, he said. If I were in your situation, I wouldn't trust me either. But I swear to you, I had never heard your name or Rose's name before yesterday. Elena just used to say she wished she could find her Aunt Rose and her family. Amy's eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them away quickly. Even if what you're saying is true, so what? Where was this precious family when I was 8 years old and had nowhere to go? Where were they when I was bouncing between foster homes that didn't want me? Where were they when I aged out of the system with nothing? Michael felt the weight of her words. Elena didn't know. She tried to find Rose for years, but Rose had moved so many times, changed her name when she got married. Helena hired private detectives, but they never found anything. Convenient story, Amy said. But her anger was mixing with something else now. A desperate hope that she was trying to push down. Look, Michael said, pulling out his wallet again. This time he showed her more pictures. Elena as a child, Elena's parents, family gatherings. I can prove everything I'm telling you. But more than that, I can show you something else. He scrolled through his phone until he found what he was looking for. A video of Elena talking about her family. Elena made this video for me. Last year before she died, he said, holding out the phone. She was talking about things she regretted, things she wished she could do differently. In the video, Elena was sitting in their living room, wearing casual clothes and looking relaxed. Her voice was warm and familiar as she spoke. I keep thinking about Aunt Rose, Elena said in the video. I was so young when she left, but I remember her being kind to me. I heard she had a granddaughter, but no one in the family knows what happened to them. I should have tried harder to find them. Maybe they needed help and I could have done something. Amy stared at the phone screen, watching Elena talk about wanting to find her family. When the video ended, she was quiet for a long time. She really didn't know about me, Amy said finally. No, Michael said, but she would have moved heaven and earth to find you if she had known how. Amy sat back down against the wall, looking overwhelmed. This is too much. I don't know what you want from me. I don't want anything from you, Michael said, sitting back down across from her. But Elena would have wanted me to help you if I could. Not because you're charity, but because you're family. I'm not your responsibility. No, Michael agreed. You're not my responsibility. But maybe we could help each other. I've been lost since Elena died. Going through the motions, but not really living. And you've been surviving on your own for so long. Maybe we both need something different. Amy looked at him suspiciously. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet, Michael admitted. But I think Elena would want us to figure it out together. For the first time since they'd met, Amy almost smiled. Elena sounds like she was a good person. She was the best person I ever knew, Michael said. And I think she would have loved meeting you. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both trying to process everything that had happened. Finally, Amy spoke. If what you're saying is true, if we really are family somehow, then I need to know more. I need proof. We can get proof, Michael said. DNA tests, family records, whatever you need. But Amy? Yeah? Even if the tests show we're not related by blood, Elena would have considered you family anyway. She had a big heart like that. Amy touched the necklace around her neck, the same gesture she'd made countless times over the years for comfort. I guess we'll see, she said quietly. 3 days passed before Michael saw Amy again. He returned to the same corner every morning, but she wasn't there. On the 4th day, he found her sitting in a different spot 2 blocks away, as if she'd been testing whether he would give up and move on. "I was starting to think you'd changed your mind," he said, approaching carefully. Amy looked up from the book she was reading, an old paperback novel with a torn cover. "I needed time to think, and I needed to ask around about you." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Ask around?" "You'd be surprised how much homeless people know about the rich folks in this city," she said with a slight smile. "Word is you're not a complete jerk, which is better than most. But I also heard about your wife's accident." Michael's expression grew somber. "What did you hear?" "That she was volunteering at a youth center when it happened. Driving home late at night after helping some kids with their homework. The other driver was drunk." Michael nodded, the familiar pain settling in his chest. "She volunteered there every Tuesday and Thursday. Said those kids needed someone who believed in them." Amy studied his face. "She sounds like the kind of person who would have helped me if she'd known I existed." "She would have," Michael said quietly. "Without question." Amy closed her book and looked at him directly. "Okay, I want to know the truth about whether we're really family. But I have conditions." "Name them." "First, I don't want your money. Whatever this is about, it's not about you writing me a check to make yourself feel better." Michael nodded. "Agreed. Second, if we do this investigation thing, I want to be involved in every step. I'm not just going to sit around while you hire fancy people to dig into my life. That makes sense. And third," Amy hesitated before continuing, "if it turns out we're not related, you walk away. You don't try to help me out of guilt or because you think Elena would have wanted you to. I've been taking care of myself for a long time and I can keep doing it." Michael wanted to argue with the third condition, but he could see how important it was to her. "Okay, but what if we are family?" "Then we figure out what that means," Amy said. "Together." That afternoon they met at a small coffee shop downtown. Michael had contacted a private investigator named Linda Chen, who specialized in finding lost family members. Linda was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "I'll be honest with you both," Linda said, spreading some papers across their table. "This kind of investigation can take weeks or even months. We're talking about records that might be scattered across different states, name changes, adoptions, foster care systems. It's not always neat and tidy." Amy shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "What exactly are you going to look into?" "Birth records, school records, social services files if we can access them. We'll trace your grandmother Rose's family tree and see how it connects to Elena's family. We'll also need DNA samples from both of you to confirm any biological relationship." "DNA tests feel so clinical," Michael said. "They're the most reliable way to know for sure," Linda replied. "But even without them, I can usually piece together a pretty clear picture from the paper trail." Over the next 2 weeks, Linda worked her way through decades of records. She called Michael and Amy to meet her at the coffee shop when she had news. "I found Rose Martinez," Linda announced, pulling out a thick folder. "Born Rosa Elena Martinez in 1935. She was Elena's father's sister." Amy leaned forward. "So Elena and I really are cousins?" "It's more complicated than that," Linda said, opening the folder. "Rose had a daughter named Carmen in 1978. Carmen would be Amy's mother." "That matches what I remember," Amy said quietly. "My mom's name was Carmen," Linda continued. "Carmen had a baby in 2004. That would be you, Amy. But here's where it gets difficult. Carmen struggled with addiction, and when you were 3, she left you with Rose and disappeared." Amy's jaw tightened. "I know that part. What you might not know is that Rose tried to contact Elena's family when you were left with her. She reached out to Elena's parents asking for help raising you." Michael and Amy both stared at Linda. "What happened?" Michael asked. "Elena's parents had just died in a house fire. Elena was only 22 and dealing with her own grief. The message never reached her. Rose tried calling several times, but Elena had moved and changed her phone number." Amy was quiet for a long moment. "So Elena's parents knew about me?" "They knew Rose had a great-granddaughter, but they died before they could do anything about it. Elena never knew the calls had come in." Michael felt a wave of sadness wash over him. Elena spent years looking for Rose's family. If she had known, "There's more," Linda said gently. "When Rose died and you went into foster care, the social worker tried to find any living relatives. Elena's name was in the family records, but she was listed under her maiden name. By then she was married and had a different last name. The social worker couldn't locate her." Amy stood up abruptly and walked to the window, her back to them. Michael could see her shoulders shaking slightly. "Amy," he said softly, "I used to imagine that somewhere out there I had family who cared about me," she said without turning around. "I used to think maybe they were looking for me but just couldn't find me. Then as I got older, I convinced myself that was just a kid's fantasy." Linda spoke carefully. "According to these records, Elena was looking for you. She hired 2 different private investigators over the years, one in 2015 and another in 2018. Amy turned around, tears in her eyes. "She was actually looking for me?" "She never stopped," Linda said. "The investigators couldn't find you because you were using different names in different foster homes, and then you aged out of the system. People experiencing homelessness are very hard to track." Michael felt his own eyes filling with tears. Elena used to say she felt like part of her family was missing. She would get this sad look sometimes and say she hoped her lost relatives were okay wherever they were. Amy sat back down at the table. "So we really are family. Elena really was my cousin." "Yes," Linda confirmed. "And there's something else. I found out why you both have identical necklaces." She pulled out an old photograph, black and white, probably from the 1940s. It showed 2 young women standing together, both wearing the same butterfly necklace. This is Rose and Elena's mother, Maria, when they were teenagers. The necklaces were made by their grandmother as matching gifts. When Rose moved away from the family, she kept one and left the other with Maria. That's how Elena ended up with one, and how Rose was able to give the other to you. Amy stared at the photograph. "They look so happy. Family arguments separated them for decades," Linda said. "But those necklaces were always meant to bring the family back together eventually." Michael looked at Amy. "Elena would have loved this story. She always believed things happened for a reason." "So what now?" Amy asked. "I mean, we know we're family. We know Elena was looking for me. But she's gone, and I'm still sitting here with nothing." "You're not sitting here with nothing," Michael said. "You're sitting here with family. Real family. And maybe that's exactly what both of us needed to find." Amy touched the necklace around her neck, the gesture that had started everything. "I guess Elena found me after all. Just not the way anyone expected." "She always was good at solving impossible problems," Michael said with a small smile. "Even after she was gone." For the first time since they'd met, Amy smiled back. A real smile full of hope and possibility. "So what do we do now, cousin?" she asked. Michael laughed, and it felt good to laugh again. "I have no idea. But I think we'll figure it out together." Learning they were family was one thing. Figuring out how to be family was something completely different. The day after meeting with Linda, Michael found Amy at her usual spot. But she seemed different, distant. When he approached with his usual offering of coffee, she barely looked up. "You okay?" he asked, settling down across from her. Amy shrugged. "Just thinking about everything we learned yesterday." "It's a lot to process," Michael nodded. He'd barely slept himself, staring at the ceiling and wondering what Elena would want him to do now. "Want to talk about it?" "Honestly, I'm scared," Amy admitted. "For 15 years I've been on my own. I've learned not to depend on anyone because people always leave or let you down. Now suddenly I have this cousin who's rich and wants to help, and I don't know how to handle that." "I'm scared too," Michael said quietly. Amy looked at him in surprise. What do you have to be scared of?" "I'm scared of messing this up," he said. "I'm scared of saying the wrong thing or doing something that makes you feel like I'm trying to control your life. I'm scared that I'll remind you too much of all the people who failed you before." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the morning commuters hurry past. "Can I ask you something?" Amy said finally. "Anything. Why does this matter so much to you? I mean, we're cousins, but we didn't grow up together. We're basically strangers. You could just give me some money and go back to your regular life." Michael thought carefully before answering. "When Elena died, I felt like I'd lost my purpose. She was the one who cared about people, who volunteered and helped others. I just worked and made money. After she was gone, I kept working because I didn't know what else to do. But helping you, it makes me feel like I'm honoring her memory. Like I'm finally doing something that would make her proud." Amy studied his face. "So this is about Elena, not about me?" "No," Michael said quickly. "It started that way, but it's not anymore." "Amy, you're the strongest person I've ever met. You've survived things that would have destroyed most people, and you did it on your own. I want to help because you're my family, but also because you deserve help. Not as charity, but as someone who's already proven she can do amazing things when given a chance. Amy's eyes softened slightly. I don't know how to let people help me. I don't know how to help people without making it weird, Michael admitted. So maybe we can learn together. Over the next few weeks, they developed a routine. Michael would visit Amy every morning before work, bringing coffee and sometimes breakfast. They would talk for an hour or so, sharing stories about their lives, their fears, their hopes. Amy told him about the foster families who had treated her well and the ones who hadn't. She talked about aging out of the system at 18 with nowhere to go, and the friends she'd made on the streets who had become like family to her. Michael shared memories of Elena and stories about growing up wealthy but lonely. He talked about his parents who had loved him but never really understood him, and how Elena had been the first person to make him feel like he belonged somewhere. You know what's funny? Amy said one morning as they sat in their usual spot. Elena and I had similar problems. We were both looking for family, for people who would understand us. She would have understood you perfectly, Michael said. You both have this way of seeing the best in people even when they can't see it in themselves. Amy laughed. I don't know about that. I'm pretty good at spotting the jerks. That's just survival instincts. But you gave me a chance when you had every reason not to trust me. Slowly, carefully, Michael began offering more substantial help. First, he suggested Amy might want to use the shower at the gym where he had a membership. Then he mentioned that a friend of his ran a job training program that might be interesting. Amy was suspicious of each offer at first, always looking for the catch or the strings attached. But Michael was patient, never pushing, never making her feel like she owed him anything. Why don't you just get me an apartment and be done with it? Amy asked one day. It would be easier for both of us. Because that wouldn't help you, Michael said. It would just make me feel better about myself. Elena always said the best way to help someone is to give them tools to help themselves. Elena was a smart woman. She was, and she would have wanted me to listen to what you actually need, not just throw money at the problem. The breakthrough came when Amy got sick. Michael found her one morning shivering and feverish, clearly too ill to be sitting outside in the cold. You need to see a doctor, he said. Can't afford it, Amy replied weakly. I can afford it. Amy started to protest, but Michael held up his hand. This isn't about money or charity. This is about family taking care of family when they're sick. If our situations were reversed, wouldn't you help me? Amy looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. At the clinic, Michael stayed in the waiting room while Amy saw the doctor. When she came out with antibiotics and instructions to rest, she looked exhausted but grateful. The doctor says I need to stay somewhere warm and dry for a few days, she said. I know a place, Michael replied. He took her to a small hotel nearby. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe. As they stood in the lobby, Amy hesitated. This feels like too much, she said. Elena used to get sick every winter, Michael told her. I would make her soup and bring her tea and make sure she took her medicine. It's what you do for people you care about. Amy's eyes filled with tears. No one's ever taken care of me when I was sick. Well, you're not alone anymore. For 3 days, Michael checked on Amy at the hotel. He brought her soup and medicine, sat with her while she rested, and told her stories about Elena to keep her entertained. On the 3rd day, Amy was feeling much better. As they sat in the small hotel room, she looked at Michael seriously. I've been thinking about what you said about Elena wanting to give people tools to help themselves. Yeah? I want to go back to school, Amy said. I dropped out when I was 16, but I always wanted to finish. Maybe even go to college someday. Michael smiled. Elena would love that idea. But I want to do it right. I don't want you to just pay for everything and have me feel like I owe you. I want to work for it, earn it. What did you have in mind? Amy took a deep breath. I want to get my GED first, then maybe take some community college classes. I can get a part-time job to help pay for things. You could help me figure out the paperwork and stuff, but I want to do the actual work myself. That sounds like a perfect plan, Michael said. Really? You're not going to try to talk me into letting you pay for a fancy private school or anything? Michael laughed. Elena went to community college before she transferred to a 4-year university. She always said those were some of the best years of her life because she was surrounded by people who really wanted to learn. Amy smiled. I think I would have really liked her. She would have been so proud of you, Michael said. For surviving everything you've been through, for having the courage to trust me, and for deciding to build a better future for yourself. Amy touched the butterfly necklace around her neck. Maybe she's watching somehow. Maybe she knows we found each other. I'd like to think so, Michael said softly. Outside the hotel window, the sun was setting over the city. For the first time in months, Amy felt hopeful about tomorrow. And for the first time since Elena's death, Michael felt like he had a purpose again. They were family now, in the truest sense of the word. Not because of blood or genetics, but because they had chosen each other. 6 months later, Amy sat at a small desk in her studio apartment, textbooks spread around her laptop as she worked on a psychology assignment. The apartment wasn't fancy, just one room with a tiny kitchen and bathroom, but it was hers. She'd earned it with her part-time job at a local nonprofit and her determination to build a life for herself. The butterfly necklace still hung around her neck, but now it felt different. Instead of being her only connection to the past, it had become a bridge between where she'd been and where she was going. A knock at the door interrupted her studying. She opened it to find Michael holding a small cake with a single candle on top. "What's this for?" she asked, stepping aside to let him in. 6 months, he said with a smile. 6 months since you got your GED. I thought that deserved celebrating. Amy laughed. You remember the exact date? I remember all the important dates now, Michael said, setting the cake on her small table. Your GED, your first day at community college, the day you got this apartment, your first paycheck from the youth center. Amy had started working at the same youth center where Elena used to volunteer. It hadn't been planned. She'd just been looking for a job that would work around her class schedule. But when she'd mentioned it to Michael, he'd gotten that look in his eyes that meant he was thinking about Elena. Do you think it's weird that I ended up working where Elena volunteered? Amy asked, cutting 2 pieces of cake. I think Elena would say there are no coincidences, Michael replied. Just life finding ways to connect the people who are supposed to be connected. Amy had discovered she was good at working with teenagers who'd been through the foster system or were experiencing homelessness. She understood their anger, their distrust, their fear of letting anyone get close. She could spot the ones who were just acting tough to protect themselves from the ones who were actually dangerous. Speaking of the youth center, Amy said, I wanted to talk to you about something. What's up? Amy sat down across from him, suddenly looking nervous. You know how you've been talking about wanting to do something meaningful with your money? Something that would make Elena proud? Michael nodded. After reconnecting with Amy, he'd started questioning what he was doing with his wealth. Making more money just to have more money didn't feel important anymore. Well, I've been thinking. The youth center is always struggling for funding. They can only help a fraction of the kids who need it, and there are so many young people aging out of foster care with nowhere to go, just like I did. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Amy took a deep breath. I think we should start a foundation. Something specifically for kids who age out of the system. Not just giving them money, but actually helping them build lives. Job training, education support, temporary housing, counseling, all of it. Michael stared at her, processing the idea. That's brilliant. But it would be a huge undertaking, I know. But think about it. You have the money and the business skills. I understand what these kids actually need because I've been there. We could do this right, Michael. We could actually make a difference. Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in years, pure excitement about a project. Not because it would make him richer or more successful, but because it could change lives. Elena would love this idea, he said softly. I hope so, because I want to name it after her. Over the next several weeks, they threw themselves into planning the Elena Martinez Foundation. Amy researched existing programs to see what worked and what didn't. Michael used his business connections to find lawyers, accountants, and social workers who could help them set up the foundation properly. They spent countless hours sitting in coffee shops, sketching out ideas on napkins and debating the best ways to help young people transition from foster care to independent living. What if we bought a building? Amy suggested one afternoon. Not a traditional group home, but something like apartments where kids could live for up to 2 years after aging out. They'd have support staff available, but also privacy and dignity. Like a bridge between foster care and being completely on their own, Michael said, making notes on his laptop. Exactly. And we could have life skills classes, job training partnerships, even help them with college applications if that's what they want. Michael looked up from his computer. Amy, this isn't just a good idea. This could be a model for programs all over the country. As their plans became more concrete, Amy made a suggestion that surprised Michael. "I think I should move out of my apartment," she said. "What? Why? I thought you loved having your own place." "I do, but I think I should live in the first transitional house we open. Not as a resident, but as a live-in coordinator. Someone who's been through what these kids are going through, who can be there when they need help at 2 in the morning or when they're scared about a job interview." Michael was quiet for a moment. "That's a big sacrifice. You've worked so hard for your independence." "It's not a sacrifice if it's helping other people gain their independence," Amy said. "Besides, I'll still be independent. I'll just be independent in a way that matters." 8 months after they'd first started planning, the Elena Martinez Foundation opened its first transitional living facility. It was a renovated apartment building with 12 units, each designed for 1 or 2 young adults aging out of foster care. Amy moved into the supervisor's apartment on the first floor. Michael insisted on buying her new furniture and making sure her space felt like home. On opening day, they stood in the lobby together, waiting for their first residents to arrive. Amy wore her butterfly necklace as always. Michael wore a tie that had belonged to Elena. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," Amy admitted. "What if we're not good at this? What if we can't actually help these kids? Then we'll figure out how to do it better," Michael said. That's what Elena would have done. The first resident to walk through the door was a 17-year-old girl named Zoe, who reminded Amy of herself at that age. Scared, angry, and trying to hide both emotions behind a tough exterior. "So this is it?" Zoe asked, looking around suspiciously. "What's the catch?" Amy smiled. "No catch. Just a safe place to figure out your next steps." "Right. And what do you get out of it?" Amy's answer surprised even herself with its honesty. "I get to make sure no one else has to sleep outside because they aged out of foster care with nowhere to go." Zoe's tough expression softened slightly. "You've been there?" "I've been exactly where you are now," Amy said. "And I'm here to help you get to where you want to be." Over the following months, the foundation helped dozens of young people transition to independent living. Not all of them succeeded immediately. Some struggled with jobs, others with school, a few moved out before they were ready. But all of them knew they had a place to come back to if they needed help. Amy discovered she had a talent for seeing potential in people that others had written off. Michael found that using his wealth to change lives gave him more satisfaction than any business deal ever had. One evening, as they sat in Amy's apartment going over applications for their second facility, Michael looked at her with pride. "Elena would be so proud of what you've built," he said. Amy touched her necklace thoughtfully. "What we've built. And I think she'd be proud of what you've become too." "What do you mean? When I first met you, you were just a rich guy who worked all the time. Now you're someone who understands that the most important things in life can't be bought. They have to be built one relationship at a time." Michael smiled. "I had a good teacher." "We had a good example," Amy corrected, looking at Elena's photo on the wall. Even after she was gone, she was still showing us how to take care of people. As they continued working late into the evening, both of them felt the truth of what they'd learned. That family isn't just about blood or genetics. It's about choosing to show up for each other, day after day, even when it's difficult. It's about using whatever gifts you have to make someone else's life a little bit better. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, a dropped phone and a butterfly necklace can change.